Rookie wide receivers sometimes can be the biggest source of upside for your redraft fantasy football league. We've spent months yapping about these guys from a dynasty lens, and we already talked about the running backs a few days ago. We're going to break down basically the redraft and best ball cases. So a single year, first year projection for all of the top rookie wide receivers in the 2025 NFL draft. We're going to go kind of in descending order from the first guy off the board in ADP through, kind of the guys that are more late round picks. And then also the scroll the F down only in best ball would you ever draft these guys kind of picks there. So let's start it off, Danny, with the guy who was technically the second wide receiver off the board, but the first pure wide receiver off the board in Tetairoa McMillan, who went in the top 10 to the Carolina Panthers. Currently, right now, there's NFL season-long projections for a lot of these top guys, and you can take advantage of them over on Underdog and the link down below to sign up using code FSE. Tet McMillan is projected for 824.5 receiving yards. Carolina obviously spends that very, very high-end draft capital for them to presumably make Tet McMillan their number one receiver.
He's a wide receiver that Bryce Young pounded the table for. You could have made the case this offseason. Multiple people in the Carolina Panthers brass, beat reporters, people that follow the team, were vocal for the longest time, like they're going to go defense. Maybe it's Walter Nolan. Maybe if Mason Graham slips. Obviously, we heard a lot of the buzz connecting them to a guy like Jalen Walker. Like that was where everything was heading. And then draft day, it's made apparent the best kept secret in the draft was their affinity towards Tet McMillan. Apparently what happened is at 8th overall, when he was on the clock, Bryce Young basically told him, like, go get me Tetairoa McMillan. He's the guy that we need. You could have made the case, having Jalen Coker, obviously great end to his rookie season as an undrafted free agent. Adam Thielen there, strong start to the year. Our guy, Xavier Legette, 31st pick from last year, bringing the juice, bringing the size to the position. It's like, you could have kind of like makeshifted your way into thinking, okay, maybe they don't have a one, but they got to cast the guys that can proceed going forward. But ultimately, as an organization, when your main goal is to further development of Bryce Young, they went out and they grabbed him as number one wide receiver. And I have no concerns about immediate play time. Apparently, it's already been confirmed from Dave Canales. He expects McMillan to be an impact starter from day one. And I see it, man. He's got the inside-out versatility. Obviously, the Canales tea leaf here is that he worked with Mike Evans in Tampa Bay. Tet McMillan, same size stature that Mike Evans brings to the table. But I also do think that inside versatility with the yak game that McMillan brings, he could very well also be used in the Drake London aspect. So to me, when you're getting that type of upside in best ball in the 4th round and in redraft, I believe his ADP is around the 60th, 62nd overall pick, he's the guy I'm smashing because I think he can be an immediate contributor with the lead upside.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that he's not right away the guy that they look to for a potential 140 plus target alpha wide receiver one. And I've made the comparison already that Tet McMillan also played with a very similar quarterback, both in high school and college, to Bryce Young and Noah Fafita, who's like a very Walmart Temu version.
Temu Bryce Young.
Yeah, like Bryce needs to work out for this franchise to feel successful. Like if the Panthers win 6 games this year and Bryce is clearly a franchise quarterback, the season was a success. Yeah. And Tetairoa McMillan was that's why you draft this. Like, yes, you could have gone defense. Your defense was like historically bad, especially against the run last year. But if you're giving up a lot of points and Bryce looks like a franchise quarterback, then everyone's getting contract extensions, including Dave Canales. So that's what the important part of this franchise is. And that's why they spent the pick on Tet McMillan. The redraft projection, where do you have him ranked among wide receivers? Because he is going off the board wide receiver 21, 40th overall off the board in terms of ADP. I am very slightly below market on him. I have him at wide receiver 23, and he is my 46th overall player. But I'm generally in line with where he goes in best ball. And in redraft, I'm sure that's way higher than he's going to go off the board.
Yeah, so in terms of my best ball rankings, he is actually my wide receiver 21. Funny enough, I have him right behind the guy that I literally just comped him to in terms of Mike Evans. Obviously, Canales working with Evans, now working with McMillan. I have McMillan one spot after Evans. If I hear more positive on Godwin, I would have to make that evaluation close to the season, but I feel confident in saying he's going to be within that wide receiver 18 to wide receiver 23 range is about the range he'll finish.
Yeah, especially when you factor in, probably a 25+% target share from day one. This is an offense that both of us kind of think can be sneaky decent. Like maybe it's not a top 10 offense in the NFL, but back weighted when it matters most, it's a top 15 offense down the stretch or something. I could definitely see that happening.
I would take Tetairoa McMillan straight up over Terry McLaurin and sleep like a baby doing so.
I wouldn't, but I do have them ranked in the same tier very closely. So I have McMillan kind of sandwiched in between like DK Metcalf, Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy, Cortland Sutton. You got kind of a mix of what are you looking for in that territory? Because if you're looking for more of a safe plug and play guy who's not going to lose you your league. Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, Zay Flowers probably fit the bill there. But if you're looking for an upside swing, Tetairoa McMillan, the next guy that we're going to talk about in a second, Xavier Worthy, like those guys fit the bill a little bit more as like the ceiling swing.
I honestly don't see much of a downside scenario with Tet personally. Like the prospect that we saw.
The prospect is where I see the downside scenario is that he was a little bit raw as a route runner. It might take him a couple of weeks to figure out NFL speed. There was, smart, connected real life wide receiver talent evaluators like Steve Smith, who played for the Carolina Panthers, and Matt Harmon and some other people that were a little bit lower on his ability to consistently generate separation.
Hey, I mean, Steve Smith, that Panthers lineage there, maybe go help the boy with it.
Yeah, no, he was very excited about the DJ Moore pick, not so excited about the Tetairoa McMillan pick. So we'll see how it plays out. I do think the way that he fails is that he probably has a slow start to his career. That would be the way that he fails. Just from a talent perspective, everything, circumstantially is there. He has a good enough quarterback to produce. He's going to have the target share. He's going to have the route participation, the playing time. None of that's an issue. And it is an issue for the next guy that we're going to talk about. But the actual player, how quickly does he adjust to the NFL? Camp buzz going to be very important for Tet McMillan. If we hear drum beats consistently, he is the dude. He looks like the best receiver here. It's not even freaking close. That's great news for McMillan. And you should probably be moving him up your draft board as training camp goes along in that situation.
And don't get me wrong. I think just given the fact that we both believe Bryce Young over the situation this guy had as a rookie year is immediately going to make it so that I don't think the floor maybe is this low if he plays 17 games. But we also have to acknowledge the best comparable for both of us in the prospect cycle was Drake London. Drake London as a rookie, 866 yards, 4 receiving touchdowns, wide receiver 31. It's it was fine, but you weren't having to draft that as the wide receiver 21 off the board. So I can see why some people might be hesitant. However, I just think if you gave Drake London this year's Bryce Young, that would have been closer to 1,000, 1,100 and 6 to 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, not to mention, I think Canales going to, it's going to probably be relatively a run-heavy offense. Chuba Hubbard there had a great season, but I don't think it's going to be 470 pass attempts like rookie year Drake London dealt with Arthur Smith and the Atlanta Falcons there. So let's move on to Travis Hunter, who I actually I do have Tet McMillan one spot ahead of Travis Hunter. So you're going to make the pro Travis Hunter case. Anybody who's a fan of the channel, has watched us all Dynasty offseason, knows the pro Travis Hunter case, especially from you, because you've been notoriously bullish on the player. But 749.5 receiving yards is his season-long projection, 1.5 plus receiving yard games. I think the 1.5 100 plus receiving yards games is my favorite way to play Hunter. And then also you have the defensive side of the football, 1.5 defensive interceptions. I'll let you make the bullish case on Hunter because I'll walk us back a little bit and talk about the bearish case.
And it's you can walk us back and you could bring the bearish while also acknowledging wide receiver 30 is absolutely unacceptable on a platform that prioritizes upside.
Well, even I'm at 24, so yes, I agree.
So it's even though I'm bullish, spoiler alert, he's my wide receiver 19 in best ball. I'm still drafting a shit ton of him every time in the 4th. And now that he's going in the 5th, I'm drafting him even in the 5th because, again, I don't need to sell you on the talent level. I've made this case all offseason. I've been accused of fellatioing Travis Hunter because there's not enough good things I can say about him. Realistically, as a prospect, he's one of the best wide receiver prospects I've ever watched. The reason why people are letting one of the best wide receiver prospects of his generation slip in best ball is because they are unsure what to make of the wide receiver versus cornerback dilemma. How much defense is he going to play? How much offense is he going to play? Is it going to be 70-30 defense? Is it going to be 70-30 offense? What percentage of that offense will we need for him to be an acceptable 4th round pick? That's what's going through a lot of people's heads right now. And to me, again, based on the quotes we've heard this offseason, I think it lends someone a space for interpretation. But to me, from both Liam Cohn and Tony Khan themselves, the vibe that I got is that he's going to start the offseason on offense. That's already been confirmed. It's already been happening. And Tony Khan specifically said he will handle as many snaps as he can. Is he going to play 100 snaps a game? Probably not. But when I'm reading the tea leaves, are you really going to function as an offense with your complementary talent around BTJ being De'Ami Brown, Brenton Strange, and Parker Washington for prolonged stretches of time? Or are you going to get your unicorn wide receiver on the field?
Yeah, well, and you just think of the team investment into the player. He was the 2nd pick in the draft. They traded away a future 1st rounder and a high 2nd rounder to go up and get him from 2 spots down. Yeah. It's not like they traded up from 26 or something to go get the guy. They traded up from 4 to go get him. So this is where, or was it 5? I can't remember exactly.
Yeah,
but
5.
Either way, you slice it. That's the bullish case. He's a unicorn and he's an absolute monster because realistically, the prospect model shows that his best comps, even despite not knowing in the prospect model that he also was the best corner or one of the best corners in college football and won the Bolitnikoff at wide receiver, is Garrett Wilson, Justin Jefferson, and JSN. The fact that his wide receiver numbers, when he didn't even play real wide receiver snaps until his junior year, are comparable to prospect calibers of Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, and JSN is absurd, man. If anybody comments on this video right now that he was an average player at both positions in college, you just don't know ball. You frankly don't.
I've heard that case so many times from non-ball knowers, and it makes me want to literally poke my eyeballs out because, well, what are you not seeing? Like, the guy just moves differently is the best way I can explain it. The fluidity, the ball tracking, the core balance, like everything is there. Again, I'm not going to keep going in depth on the ability of the player because I can do that for an hour at a time and not blink an eye. Realistically, what it comes down to for me is, yeah, sure, maybe he's not 100% of the snaps player. I don't think either of us expect him to be. Even if he was, let's just say starting out 65 to 75% of the offensive snaps. He's going to play 80+% of the routes because he's going to be on the field when they're throwing the football. On top of that, when he is on the field and when they are throwing the football, his targets per route run is going to be high. His yards per route run is going to be high because why else would you have him on the field unless you have plans to get him the football in space?
Yeah, I think what it looks like as far as a median projection, because I think the ceiling here is legitimately remember back in 2021, you could get Jamar Chase in the 4th, 5th round. And that was just like a generational wealth opportunity. Like we might never see that again from a rookie wide receiver of that caliber of prospect talent of Jamar Chase. Like think about last year, Neighbors and Harrison were not going where Chase went as a rookie.
Yeah.
That's the ceiling, legitimately, that he has like 1,500 yards his rookie season. That is the legitimate range of outcomes for Travis Hunter because he plays 80, 90, 100% of the snaps on offense, maybe moonlights a little bit on defense. And we've heard, like you said, some quotes saying going to play offense more. We heard James Gladstone on the Rich Eisen show or whatever say that he knows defense more, so we're getting him more reps on offense. Like it could go either way. Like you said, it's open to interpretation, however you want to take it. The median range of outcomes from just like a straight up best ball thing is he has like Jordan Addison or Jameson Williams production, which is like 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's like what his production looks like. Maybe he gets there in a little bit different ways, but I think Addison's like kind of rookie season, second season are a good kind of framework for what it looks like baseline level. And to me, that is worth the wide receiver 24, wide receiver 22, somewhere in that range in terms of overall best ball. And I think in managed leagues, he might be a little bit of a headache the way that like a Jameson Williams type would have been last year. But you also, if he's like a flex for you, because he's your 3rd receiver or 4th receiver on your team, just throw him into your lineup and he'll give you his big weeks when he gives you his big weeks.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, especially if you're in deeper leagues, play the volatility, man. If you're in a 2 flex, 3 wide receiver league, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex type of league, it's like, yeah, sure. Is Hunter going to have some weeks maybe where he plays 52% of the offensive snaps, gets 5 targets and goes, 2 for 43. Yeah, sure. That might happen a couple times. But guess what? In the weeks where he goes 9 for 143 and 2 touchdowns, you're winning your flex.
Yeah. And you can draft. We always talk about your team is it's a whole thing, an organism that works together. If you take Hunter in round 5 in your managed redraft league, you can then turn around and take Chris Olave in round 6 to balance out the risk a little bit that you got a guaranteed number one.
Rob types.
Yeah, like you could Chris Godwin, you can take Jerry Jeudy, like guys that are just guaranteed alphas who are going to get targets that you can offset some of the volatility of Hunter in your flex spot.
Hey, if you wanted to get super gross and you're in a deep league, round 15, 16, we mentioned his teammate before, but hey, maybe if Tet McMillan got off to a slow start and you wanted to grab Adam Thielen in the last round, I actually see him as semi-viable early in the year.
Yeah, and even from like a managed redraft perspective too, like if you're deciding in your flex, like let's say you're in a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex league, Hunter's your wide receiver 4, and you also have Jordan Addison or Jaden Reed or Stephon Diggs or Chris Godwin or Jerry Jeudy as your 5th receiver, then you can just kind of, Hunter's got a good matchup. They said he's going to, maybe we have a bit of an idea trend-wise of when he plays more wide receiver and when he doesn't by that point in the season. You can play matchups at that point. Managed leagues might be a bit of a headache, but yeah, best ball, the price doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Let's talk about Matthew Golden. We went kind of in depth on those top guys, but they are going higher than the rest of these dudes. There's a big ADP discrepancy between Hunter and McMillan, who go basically in the top 50, give or take, and then Matthew Golden, who goes at 77.5 overall ADP, and then a couple more wide receivers that go shortly after him. Matthew Golden, we kind of already talked about, so we can kind of briefly skim over him because we went over the most contentious wide receiver cores around the NFL, and we did spend a lot of time on Jayden Reed versus Matthew Golden. Which one do we like? Because they're basically the same price. Matthew Golden expected 4.5 receiving touchdowns, 724.5 receiving yards by Underdog. Some of the quotes we've heard have been that he's like immediately gelled with Jordan Love in offseason practices. He should get playing time right away. We know that the role that he's kind of entering was previously held by Christian Watson, which is going to be like the deep field stretcher, make the big plays. From a best ball perspective, that obviously means a lot. But you look at Golden, the prospect, and he ranks as like the 5th or 6th best wide receiver in this class, even though he's the 3rd wide receiver off the board, both from, I believe, the real life NFL draft standpoint, I guess the 4th wide receiver off the board from that perspective. And he also has comps to like Anthony Miller, Jahan Dotson, Sterling Shepard, Tyler Boyd, as opposed to the guy that we'll talk about in a second, who has a lot better of comps. So it's not like he was an excellent prospect. It's not like he earned a shit ton of targets in college. It's not like he had a pristine prospect profile, but he is going to play a role for an offense that should be very efficient with a good quarterback who, more importantly, likes to chuck the football deep and likes to take risks and likes to work downfield, even if the pass volume might not necessarily be there. But all that being said, I prefer Jayden Reed, his teammate, who is basically the same price.
Yeah, I agree. I would prefer Jayden Reed. The reason why Matthew Golden is interesting to me is because what were the Packers missing the majority of last year that was working for them the 2 years prior?
A field stretcher.
A field stretcher, because Christian Watson last year was both banged up. Christian Watson wasn't playing his best. Christian Watson in the previous 2 years, 611 and 7 touchdowns in 14 games in 2022 with Aaron Rodgers. But even with Jordan Love in 2023, 422 yards and 5 touchdowns in 9 games. And keep in mind, he is just predominantly a field stretcher. As we know with Matthew Golden, he is a legitimate 3-level threat wide receiver. He's a guy who can win on quick in-breakers. He's a guy who can win in the yak game. He's a guy that can impact all levels of the field. So to me, when I see what the Packers were trying to do this offseason, it's like, okay, Christian Watson, his knee is torn up. We can't rely upon him on this year. We need to fill in that aspect of our offense that will be missing without Christian Watson. Why not just get the guy that can do that, but also be a complete number one if he develops the right way?
Yeah, and between the two Packers receivers, it does usually depend on what you're looking for, because while I think Jayden Reed has a relatively high spike week upside, just like Matthew Golden does, given the speed and whatnot, I usually am like trying to bank targets by that point in the draft because I've already swung in the mid rounds on Tetairoa McMillan, on Travis Hunter, on guys like that. So by round 7 or whatever, when you have to take one of these two guys, I usually go, okay, I need a 4th receiver. I need a 5th receiver. I'm going to take the routes and the targets and, what I've already seen from Jayden Reed over Matthew Golden. Whereas if I was boring and I drafted 4 basic receivers, then maybe I would take Golden for the upside. Because I do think on a 99th percentile range of outcomes, his ceiling is probably higher than Reed's.
Yeah, because even like in that's such a tricky range right now, because it's like that's right after like the Jerry Jeudy, Jordan Addison, Chris Godwin go off the board, and like right before we get to the absolute depths, like outside of Josh Downs, right after these guys, it's like Khalil Shakir and Diggs. Obviously, Diggs is polarizing because if he stays healthy, he's the number one potentially for Drake May. But as we know, older wide receiver coming off a big knee injury, like. Outside of Josh Downs in this range, it gets a little bit mucky. So to me, these rookie wide receivers and Jayden Reed and Josh Downs stick out like sore thumbs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like this is also one of those situations too, this offense in general, where I am much more likely to take the syrup. Where I think Jordan Love, he's literally my quarterback 8 in fantasy. Yeah. Like I have him super, super high. And I think that he has just a very, like every offensive skill player that they have complements each other perfectly. Dubs, big possession guy. Reed, move the chains, gadget guy. Golden, stretch the field, 3-level guy. Tucker Kraft, seam busting tight end. Josh Jacobs, of course, going to keep the offense on schedule on the ground. Like I think that Jordan Love is really the biggest beneficiary of this Matthew Golden addition. And same goes for Kraft and Jacobs, who are probably going to get opened up over the middle of the field because of it. So yeah, I mean, Golden is a nice player. I take him when I intend to stack him up with, week 17 correlation and Jordan Love later. But generally speaking, I do lean towards Jayden Reed more often.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned dude, honestly, there's so many good quarterbacks in redraft. Like I love, like even if you like Fields goes higher than this, but Fields is like the last of the tier for me. And realistically, there's like 19, 20 guys I'm confident in this year.
Dude, I have from quarterback, and I might
insane.
actually have to adjust this now after the Tristan Wirfs news about Baker Mayfield.
I got to drop him a
I
little bit.
legitimately think that quarterback 6 is the absolute worst pick to take at the quarterback position.
I agree.
Because as much as I think Mayfield, Mahomes, those guys are probably the favorites to go as quarterback 6 or whatever off the board. Is there a huge difference between my quarterback 6, Baker Mayfield, and my quarterback 14 or 13, CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams? There's not a huge difference, realistically.
No, it's like out of this range, the pocket passers, because obviously we could talk about, Kyler, Drake, Bo Nix, guys that run the football.
All in that tier for me. It's a mega tier of like 7 or 8 quarterbacks.
But that's what I mean. It's like, realistically, can you tell me a big tangible difference between my quarterback 6, which is Patrick Mahomes, and my quarterback 14, which is Jordan Love?
No. Because I have Jordan Love quarterback 8, which is why it's proof that it's not a big difference.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like I'm going through it. Mahomes 6, Kyler 7, Dak 8. Obviously, you just mentioned the Wirfs injury. I dropped Baker down a few spots. 9, Caleb Williams 10, May 11, Nix 12, Lawrence 13, Love 4. Like, I would love all these guys as my quarterback 1 this year.
Yeah, no,
that's not even talking about Purdy and McCarthy and Goff and Stroud Lawrence and Herbert and Fields. Like,
yeah, no,
it's nuts.
Tons of guys. But anyways, we're not talking about quarterbacks right now. It's just piggybacking off of the golden point is that Jordan Love's a great value. Anyways, let's talk about, speaking of Baker Mayfield, let's talk about Emeka Egbuka. Obviously, we did just get the news that I do think will impact the Buccaneers offense a decent bit. I mean, Tristan Wirfs, for my money, is the best left tackle in football, and at least a top 3 to 5 left tackle in football. And Emeka Egbuka going off the board, wide receiver 48, 88.4 overall ADP. I think we're going to see a little bit of a shift in terms of every Buccaneers player going down a little bit, especially Baker Mayfield, I think, because he is the quarterback 6 off the board for most people. But Emeka Egbuka, the kind of quotes we've heard about this player is, he's a pro's pro. He's the most mature receiver we've ever seen as a rookie since Chris Godwin. Expect him to have a big role in the offense. Like Jason Light literally said, I would have thrown up if I traded down from this player, because the Steelers and Broncos were the 2 teams that were trying to trade up.
They're going to take him.
And I guarantee it was for Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. If anybody had watched Emeka Egbuka in college and watched the film and watched the manner that he played, and not even just talking about just the skill set, because obviously the skill set's very appealing. Like, you could totally see this guy developing in a Monor St. Brown type of upside there. Like, I truly see him being a volume, target commanding slot wide receiver that can play on the outside in a pinch. However, when you just see his demeanor, the way he approached everything, every single route, every single snap, every single piece of detail, that was all in his game. Like, there was no projection with Emeka Egbuka. You know you were getting a damn good football player as soon as OTAs kicked off.
The question was, how good can he be? Not, is he good? That means he's a good pick in fantasy formats alike, whether it's best ball, redraft, and especially dynasty. If you know a guy's just going to be a good player, like, it's pretty hard not to pick the guy, especially when his prospect profile aligns very similarly to JSN, Jerry Jeudy, and DJ Moore, according to the prospect model, despite having to compete for targets with the guys he had to compete with, whether it was the top end Ohio State wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave in his freshman year, or it was Marvin Harrison or Jeremiah Smith after that, who are 2 of the better wide receiver prospects we've ever seen.
Hey, is he ever going to lead the league in homers? Probably not. Is he going to be up there in terms of extra base hits? Absolutely.
Yeah, dude. Like, from a redraft perspective, because I think this is we got to recycle our refocus ourselves here. The reason that you draft Emeka Egbuka is that you're bearish on Chris Godwin. That's probably the reason you draft him, is because I expect this offense to maybe get out to a bit of a slower start now without Tristan Wirfs. And if Chris Godwin's not on the field, he's a major part of this offense. And Emeka Egbuka can really feast a PPR kind of scam way into a lot of targets, into a lot of receptions. And of course, we know that Egbuka and Mike Evans are probably not going to encroach on each other's territory too much because they work in different areas of the field. And also, Evans is the big play in the red zone guy.
Although I will say both Baker and your guys' veteran receivers have talked about the fact that his alignment versatility is something that took them aback in preseason training camp so far.
Well, yeah, and here's the other thing with Egbuka. Because he played in the slot in college, people think
he's slot only.
He's just a slot-only player. Like, dude, the guy was the number 1 receiver recruit in the country coming out of high school and tested very well as well. So it's not like he's only limited to
Jefferson was slot only too, don't worry.
Yeah, like, dude, JSN does not have speed like Emeka Egbuka. Like, JSN was a slot-only projection coming out of college because he didn't have elite speed. He had excellent agility and obviously the production and stuff. But Emeka Egbuka is significantly better athlete and bigger.
Yeah. No, I think you outlined it to a T. I also think, too, obviously last year you guys were kind of known as whoever's healthy with a pulse is going to catch footballs in our offense. Jaylen McMillan, Cade Otton, Rashad White. Like
I can name some fake humans if you'd like me to. Like Ryan Miller caught passes in our offense last
is
year.
that
Like
Scotty's fucking nephew? Like what's
Sterling
going on?
Shepard had like 8 target games for us last year.
Well, didn't he have that one against the Eagles, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, we had literal nobodies catching passes, particularly like October to November, because Evans was out for a couple of games and Godwin went down for the year.
I think it'll be much more concentrated this year because that's the reason why you draft a receiver at 19 is to fix those gaps if one of your vets are out of the lineup.
Well, yeah, and you also have kind of like dual handcuff upside with Emeka Egbuka that if anything happens to Godwin, which he's already entering the season with an injury, a pre-existing one, and Mike Evans, who is 32 years old and has a history of hamstring pulls, specifically Evans, when he's on the field, is going to like the team. I've never seen a team be more concerned with a single player record in my life than Mike Evans' 1,000-yard receiving streak. But yeah, this is what we're at with Emeka Egbuka. He is a great pick. He's kind of like being drafted at his floor, which is wide receiver, 44 or something like that, 48. Whoa. But
you want to know the kick of it,
is that he's a top 24 guy, because if any of the other guys miss time, if they fall off because they're old or anything like that, Egbuka could absolutely crush his ADP.
The kicker of it, by the way, if you guys are wondering at this point, both of us are completely in on Emeka Egbuka. When you're just contextualizing it from an underdog best ball frame, we mentioned it with Hunter, we mentioned it with McMillan. Upside in that format clears all. You're telling me that he's got dual paths to upside, because he's a rookie player. If he shows he's good enough to earn targets, maybe even usurp one of the veterans, because I mean, we both thought that he could be a number 1, number 2 right off the bat from year 1.
If he was drafted to Denver, he'd be like legitimately a 4th or a 5th round pick.
So with that type of player, with that type of upside, we're naturally betting on rookies to scale up down the end of the season. On top of that, like you said, we talk about running back handcuffs. Tell me a more valuable third wide receiver in the league. Like if Evans or Godwin were to go down, where would you be ranking Egbuka in your rankings? And why would it be anywhere below wide receiver 24? He's got to be a top 24 wide receiver. He's probably got to be a top 18 wide receiver in those weeks.
Yeah, well, he's going off the board 48. I have him 42, and I would 100% put him in the territory of Cortland Sutton, Zay Flowers, Metcalf, and you could argue he's even ahead of those guys. If like, let's say we got a setback for Godwin, he was going to be out for a significant period of time, especially with Chris, because Chris and him are going to play similar roles. Like he's going top 30, and he's probably right in line with McMillan and Hunter.
Well, I hate to keep punching this one guy, but like, tell me with a straight face you would take Terry McLaurin over Emeka Egbuka if Godwin were out till like week 9 or week 10.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument for it. I probably still would, but I'm a little bit higher on McLaurin seemingly than you are.
He's just the punching bag for me. He's my wide receiver 22 for what it's worth, so it's not like I'm completely off.
Yeah, I have him at 20, so he's a little bit higher up for me. But yeah, anything else on Egbuka, or should we move on to Jayden Higgins?
Not much. The other thing I was going to say with Underdog, obviously wide receiver 48, 88th overall ADP. Obviously that format will value the upside case more. Well, guess what? Even
it's a 10th round pick in home leagues.
He's 113 ADP in your home leagues. Like realistically, you especially if you're in a casual league, someone's gonna be like, "Who the hell is Emeka Egbuka? Give me fucking
Jacoby Myers over him or something, like Darnell Mooney over him."
Dude, the people might say, "Hey, give me Cooper Kupp over him."
Yeah, or Michael Pittman, Juwan Jennings. Like, there's going to be guys that go ahead of him in home leagues that are probably, especially for those of you guys listening to this who are in a start 7 ESPN league where it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. After the 7th round or the 8th round, all you're drafting is upside anyways. So you might as well take Emeka Egbuka in round 10 to line your bench with that upside. So yeah, Egbuka, again, this does remind me quite a bit. We've already made this comparison in the Dynasty offseason, but it does remind me quite a bit of Odunze and JSN and CeeDee Lamb's rookie seasons where they come in, they're clearly the number 3 receiver. Obviously, for all 3 of those guys, I wouldn't say they were smashes where they were drafted in terms of a redraft projection, but just because they didn't have any injuries go down in front of them on the depth chart, and like Lamb lost his quarterback that year and stuff, like there's paths still that Egbuka, even if it's the exact same bet as Odunze last year, the exact same bet as JSN his rookie year, the exact same bet as CeeDee Lamb his rookie year, it doesn't mean it's not going to work this time.
Yeah, it is still pretty remarkable that in that season, CeeDee Lamb in his rookie season lost his quarterback. Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper were both 850 plus yard guys, and CeeDee Lamb was still almost 1,000 yards in his rookie season. Like sometimes, I mean, the cream just rises to the top. If Egbuka is that guy, he will find a way to earn targets next to those 2.
Yeah, and like you guys worried about Jaylen McMillan? Don't be. He's the fourth receiver on this team.
Yeah.
Like Egbuka's already surpassed him on the depth chart. You worry about Cade Otton, who had a breakout season last year. Cade Otton's majority of his production came when Godwin and Evans were out of the lineup. So this is going to be a 3-man consolidated target share, and Baker Mayfield is going to pass for damn near more yards than any other quarterback, not named Joe Burrow or some other guys. Like he's going to be up there 4,500 plus passing yards. So there's going to be enough to go around here.
Yeah, there's a short list about like 4 to 5 quarterbacks that you can basically say, hey, lock it up, throw away the key. These guys are going to get 4,500 plus passing yards. Baker Mayfield, absolutely one of them.
Yep, for sure. So let's move on to Jayden Higgins, the Houston Texans wide receiver, the first of the two Iowa State, guys that they drafted. Wide receiver 52 off the board, 96.4 ADP on Underdog. Again, home leagues, I'm sure he's going off the board at like 120 or something like that. So keep in mind that it's a 3 wide receiver start. The wide receiver hungry nature of Underdog is going to push him up an overall ADP, but wide receiver 52 is probably generally across the board a pretty consistent projection. 624.5 receiving yards, current higher or lower for his NFL season-long projection. The reports that we've heard so far out of Texans camp has been that Christian Kirk has worked as the wide receiver 2, which is definitely to be expected, especially in OTAs and minicamp. Once we get into training camp and preseason games, we'll have to wait and see what does it look like with the first team. We expect, obviously, Nico Collins to be the number 1, but what does it look like behind him? Does Kirk play on the outside in 2 wide receiver sets? Is it Higgins on the outside in 2 wide receiver sets? Is Noel a factor over either of these 2 guys? The report is that Jayden Higgins could secure the outside wide receiver 2 role by training camp, which would be huge for him.
Yeah, and I think that's going to end up being the case. What have I said with you all offseason on why I'm higher on Nico Collins? Because they finally have another body that can play the X wide receiver role. You look at the tea leaves of that depth chart. Christian Kirk, he's not playing X. Jaylin Noel, he's not playing X. It's like, yeah, Nico Collins will take the majority of his routes at the X wide receiver position. But when you have a number 1 talent like that, look at, Puka Nacua going into this year now. Look at, CeeDee Lamb. Look at Justin Jefferson. Look, all the top number 1 wide receivers.
Godwin and Evans, who we just talked about, what Godwin was doing with Evans out there.
I mean even Evans for being, the 6'5", 230-pound receivers. Like, you guys use them in the slot a lot more than people anticipate. So when we're looking at it going forward, because they have another wide receiver capable of playing on the outside, that's going to open up more uses for Nico. And if Higgins can really truly establish himself, like, oh, we trust you to be that X wide receiver position right off the bat. Maybe it's not week 1. Maybe it's by week 3, week 4. He truly shows and shines himself in that spot. There's very real possibility he is the starting wide receiver next to Nico Collins in 12 personnel.
Yeah, and as far as a prospect, I mean, he goes top 35 in the NFL draft. His comps range from Mike Williams, Rashad Bateman, Treylon Burks, Corey Davis. Again, we're not talking about superstars here, but we're talking about guys that were all actually first-round picks instead of second-round picks. So the fact that he ranges from, as a second-rounder, 2 guys who were drafted in the first, and like the closest name to him who was a second-rounder in terms of actual, pick off the board are guys like Sky Moore. I'm trying to see here. George Pickens, Laviska Shenault. Like, that's the caliber of prospect Jayden Higgins was in the prospect model there. So I would say conservatively, we expect CJ Stroud to be better than he was the year before. However, the offensive line is kind of in tatters right now, and we don't know what to expect from the run game. The only thing that you really have to ask yourself is Jayden Higgins at wide receiver 52 worth the swing? And to me, any rookie wide receiver with this profile would be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the top 40 pick, the security with the quarterback play, the ability to usurp to the number 2 overall wide receiver in his offense. Like, I understand why the best ball community is excited drafting him as a top 100 player. And especially if you look on the redraft streets, I mean, where's his ADP in just home leagues?
It's got to be in the 120s, I would imagine. If Egbuka's at 113, like you said, I would imagine Higgins has got to be in the 120s.
117, which I think the gap between him and Egbuka should be a little larger than that. But at the same time, it's like both those guys are absolute screaming values outside of the top 100.
Yeah, and obviously it's just projectable routes and stuff that's causing that gap to be close. But yeah, I think Higgins, he was my wide receiver 6, I believe, before the draft as well. So it's not like I didn't think the prospect was a good player on film. Like he's a big receiver. My comp for him was kind of like a Cortland Sutton, Michael Pittman-y type of player where he's going to be a chain mover, a power forward. You can play him in the slot. That's the other thing too. You mentioned Nico getting moved around the formation. He can get moved around the formation as well, Jayden Higgins. He can get played in the slot if they want to maneuver, a field stretcher on the outside to try and clear out or whatever. So I do think that Jayden Higgins is going to have a role. The question is, I don't think he's got a massive ceiling unless Nico Collins goes down with injury, which has been an issue for him.
Yeah, and I guess so. It's funny. We said Sutton. Your comp form was Cortland Sutton. My comp form was actually a combo. So I mentioned the name Michael Pittman. The other one I see that actually is going pretty high over on Underdog Fantasy right now is, I mean, like, why can't he be that Jawan Jennings power forward? A bunch of in breakers, get him in space, big frame, can break a tackle or two. Like, I can see him totally being that chain mover next to Nico that they need because, as we know, I mean, Nico Collins is just an alien. He's going to separate on all three levels with ease.
Yeah, and if Higgins hits his like absolute highest end range of outcomes and he becomes a better route runner, I do think it's possible he's like a Romo Dunze or a Drake London caliber player. Like honestly, like size, frame wise, power forward, yak game, like he's just as good as those guys in that area. The area that they're better in is that they're much better route runners.
Yeah, no, for sure. Jayden Higgins, you mentioned your wide receiver 6. He was my 7. We both thought that was a very strong pick, both with top 50 talent grades on him. Strong pick taking him there in that top 40 like the Texans did. But next player off the board in Underdog right now is Tre Harris, wide receiver 54, 106th overall ADP. We could talk about this in a second, but basically I'm assuming this is the best ball community saying, hey, your wide receiver 2 behind Lam McConkey is Quentin Johnson. You draft Tre Harris in the second round. Tre Harris is your wide receiver 2. I'm assuming that's what the majority of people are coming to right now.
Yeah, and I think the narrative is different in Chargers camp than it is in the fantasy streets right now because the narrative in the fantasy streets, and you and I talked about this with Hampton, is that they're just going to run the ball like crazy. Like this team is going to just absolutely run it down everybody's throat. The beat reporters are kind of saying the opposite. They think that it possibly could, the offense could look a little different in 2025, where, and if you think about it just logically, these 3 receivers and the tight end that they drafted, Oronde Gadsden, do kind of complement each other very well, where QJ is going to be like, where did he make his money last year? Big plays, red zone, stuff like that, gadget play. Tre Harris, they think he's a great field stretcher, which is that's what he did at Ole Miss as well, even if he doesn't have like 4.3 speed or anything. And then Ladd McConkey does everything, and he's going to be their number 1 wide receiver. And they also mentioned some of the beat reporters that Oronde Gadsden is supposed to be like their seam buster because he was a former wide receiver and he can definitely get deep.
Who was our comp for him?
Kyle Pitts? No,
Close.
who did I comp him for?
I'll give you a hint. He signed somewhere this offseason.
Darren Waller?
Yeah, I mean, like that was like our upside case scenario for him. And it's funny we mentioned field stretcher. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like Tre Harris, I think his ADP is too high personally. Not at wide receiver. Wide receiver 54 seems fine to me, but 106.3 ADP, I just think it's a result of the wide receivers drying up in that area. People pushing Tre Harris up the board. 599.5 receiving yards and 3.5 touchdowns as the higher or lower. I mean, if you're drafting Tre Harris, you probably should be smashing the higher on those 2 numbers because if he has those 2 production marks, he's not going to be a good pick at that area. So I would say Tre Harris, the prospect, Josh Doxson, George Pickens, Michael Pittman, Keon Coleman was, I believe, my official comp for him, something like that. So with Tre Harris, you're kind of just betting on the offense. You're thinking that Justin Herbert can elevate his play the way that Jackson Dart really did at Ole Miss. The only question I have for Tre Harris is, of all of the receivers we've talked about so far, if you told me who is the most likely to look like they are in over their head mentally as a receiver in the NFL, Tre Harris would be my pick because I do think he was pretty raw, even despite being a redshirt senior this year. And it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if QJ is still the wide receiver 2 on this team for 9-10 games in the year.
Agreed. Yeah, you mentioned some of those names like a Keon Coleman. I had a comp to a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster. Same type of vibe there. Obviously, it's polarizing because I'm really concerned of how the mental aspect, like you said, going from that Ole Miss scheme, not really a lot of NFL concepts that were going on there. Obviously,
running by people seemingly every play. Yeah. Like most of his production comes against Furman and bad schools too.
Yeah. On top of that, I mean, obviously the profile cut short this year with the injury. It's tough to really gauge. Okay, like what would happen if he played against Alabama? What would happen if he played against some of these big schools? Obviously, a lot of that production come against the Furmans of the world, like you said. So he's polarizing. Again, I think the biggest difference that I have is I actually quite like QJ at cost right now.
Me too.
If they're going to be throwing the football more, again, a part of it too that I think we're kind of ignoring. Obviously, week 7 on, I believe that was the case that we made where they were 31st in pass rate over expectation. We also have to acknowledge that Justin Herbert or was it weeks 1 to 7 that they were 31st in pass rate over
Yeah, they were
expectation?
really run
Correct
heavy at
me.
the beginning of the year.
Justin Herbert came into the year with an ankle sprain, so I am curious. Obviously, another part of the aspect that we've been hearing from beat reporters, they expect a lot more quarterback run this year. So I am curious. Maybe they just let Justin Herbert kind of run the show, better weapons around him. Obviously, Hampton is a first-round caliber running back. You would say the team investment would lean to them towards running the football, but I do believe Omari Hampton could be a full-fledged 3-down running back. I mean, if you guys want the takes on that, we talked about it in the rookie running back report video that we did a couple days ago, but yeah, he's got to beat out QJ, and I don't know if that's going to happen.
I have QJ ranked ahead of him straight
I
up.
do too.
So it's not because I don't think Tre Harris can beat out QJ. It's not like QJ is a huge bar to clear. It's that, like I said, based on what I saw from Tre Harris, the prospect, I do expect him to have somewhat of a down rookie season where we have to kind of piecemeal together from a dynasty angle. Okay, how good was this guy really? Like Keon Coleman was my comp for him. Anybody excited about Keon Coleman right now? Like he's kind of fine if you liked him before, but he's not anybody to beat the door down in terms of what he did as a rookie. And I think Tre Harris could have a very similar rookie season to what Keon Coleman did. And you're like, well, this guy has Justin Herbert. It's like, well, Keon Coleman had Josh Allen. So it's not any different realistically. Just because the guy goes to a good quarterback doesn't mean he's going to be a smash every single time. And QJ, his teammate, is a very good example of that because when he was a rookie, we all drafted him in the 6th round.
QJ is so interesting because he was a guy that everybody was like, oh my God, he's so talented at going into his rookie year. Then he had a bad rookie year and everybody's like, oh, he's completely useless. Then he had actually a pretty impressive sophomore year and people just still think he's useless.
Not to mention, QJ is the same age as Tre Harris. And QJ has 2 years of NFL coaching under his belt. And QJ, like Tre Harris, was raw coming into the NFL. And now we don't have to deal with the rawness aspect from, again, this is not a dynasty take, QJ over Tre Harris in dynasty, although I did actually tack on QJ to the end of a dynasty trade a couple days ago. I will say QJ in redraft is absolutely the better pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean in basketball too. QJ. Obviously, this is full PPR, so keep that in mind. QJ had 3 weeks of 20+ PPR points last year.
Dude, he was a top 38 receiver in points per game, and he is 5 months older than Tre Harris.
If we had said going into last year, yeah, QJ is going to give you 700+ receiving yards and 8 receiving touchdowns, I would have expected people to be over there like, oh my God, I can't believe he took that step after what it looked like as a rookie. I thought he would never get there. He figured a lot of shit out in his second year. So if he's going to stay in the 140s, just give me all the QJ. I know this is a rookie wide receiver video, but this is counterintuitive to taking Tre Harris, right?
Yeah, this is why I'm not drafting Tre Harris, is that I would rather play it through QJ and even an 18th round scroll the F down on Oronde Gadsden.
Speaking of playing passing games through a weapon as opposed to the more expensive one, we'll get to the Chicago Bears now because it's pretty evident if you guys have been watching the channel, you'll know my thoughts on DJ Moore. The single most overpriced wide receiver in fantasy right now. People are treating him as an alpha wide receiver 1. I think this room is going to be by committee, and I think whoever is going to go out there and play the best is going to be the ones that are in the targets.
Yeah, and if that's your thought, which maybe it's not your thought listening to this, maybe you do think DJ Moore is the wide receiver 1 and you'll take DJ Moore. Because when we talked about him as one of the worst picks on the board, there was plenty of people in the comments like, DJ Moore's still a stud. He's going to blah, blah, blah. That's fine if you have that opinion. But I have also, even as someone who wasn't as high on the prospect of Luther Burden as you were, have been playing this offense through Luther Burden and Colson Loveland, the tight end they drafted in the 1st round. It was a soft tissue injury that's caused his price to slide a little bit. He actually was going right around the range where Jayden Higgins was going for a while. And then, he's dropped about 20 spots of ADP since OTAs and minicamp when he's been dealing with some time. The one thing I will say about Luther Burden, because I know you're going to, do the fellatio to him as well. Luther Burden can't afford to miss any offseason time as the player was raw and will have, in my opinion, maybe not the most optimal role in this offense, even if the beat reporters right now are beating the door down that this is going to be a spread you out horizontally, get our playmakers in space, utilize the screen game. Well, that's great news for Luther Burden because that's what he does best anyways. But there is other guys in the offense that do that well too, like DJ Moore and like Colston Loveland and like DeAndre Swift. So there's a lot of overlapping skill sets here, which is why that it kind of does make sense to play it through Burden because he is the cheapest.
You know what happens when there's an ambiguous situation? What do we say all the time? When a situation is ambiguous, take your stances and get your ownership up. Luther Burden was my wide receiver 3 in the class. He was your wide receiver 4. We both love the prospect. Obviously, you were a little bit more concerned about the immediate translatability, which knocked him from, I have him at an 86.5. You had him at an 84.0. Regardless, though, we both love the player a ton, and we thought him falling to 39th overall was a steal in its own right. I do agree. It is quite concerning that he's missed this valuable time right now with that soft tissue injury. But Ben Johnson's a man with a plan. Ben Johnson ain't taking a guy like Luther Burden with that dynamic skill set, the ability and space, if he doesn't plan on getting on the field right away. You mentioned, they have other guys that can work in space. Luther Burden, to me, can actually be the extension of the passing game through the backfield that we saw from Deebo Samuel in San Francisco, that we've seen from DJ Moore in the past, where it's like, realistically, yeah, sure. Maybe you don't want them running every single route in the tree right off the bat. But if you can get this guy in space and he can give you 8+ yards of yak over expected, which I can definitely see that being a case. Like, let's just say a play's blocked up, a normal receiver gets you 5 yards. Luther Burden can get you 12, 11, 12, 13 yards on any single play. He's a nightmare to bring down in space. We know that the developing skill set as a pure route runner is there. He showed flashes of it. It just wasn't consistent. If he can just meld it on all together, I do think he has the upside to be the most talented receiver in this room. It's just the aspect of the target competition is why his ADP is deflated. And I think a lot of people, even in best ball, agree, like, he's a better prospect than what Higgins was, than what Harris was, but they're concerned about the immediate opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean, you could have said the same about another receiver who played for Ben Johnson last year, who had a lot of heavy target competition ahead of him on the depth chart, who was absolutely a very good best ball pick because of the spike week upside that he presented. Yep. And Jameson Williams does different things than Luther Burden, but Luther Burden is also very explosive and fast himself. Who's to say that he doesn't have, one of these seasons where we look at Burden at the end of the year and we go, okay, he only caught 47 balls, but he had 900 yards and 6 touchdowns or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, in best ball, obviously that'll play. That's why, 116.5 ADP, dude. Like, yeah, sure, there'll be weeks where he's probably a no-go in this offense, but for the spike week upside and low and an offense that I believe can take that step, I do think this is an offense with the improvements on the offensive line, with Caleb's natural progression in year 2, with Ben Johnson coming over, really fortifying that scheme. This can definitely be an offense that finishes as a top 10 unit in the NFL, and I want my exposure to it. Instead of playing that through DJ Moore in the 4th round, Roma Dunze's 20 picks cheaper. Loveland, you mentioned. Loveland might be
Loveland is absolutely the best pick of any of them, in my opinion.
Agreed. And then Burden, I mean, I just don't see, other than, like, I understand the injury, but I just don't see how that can impact his ADP by 20 spots. I just don't. Yeah, I'd be comfortable taking him in the top 100.
Yeah, no, I've been pretty much, even though I wasn't as high on Burden as you, I've been right in line with, I'm fading more and I'm taking Odunze where I can, but I am going to be taking a shit ton of Burden and Loveland, and I have over 15% of both players.
I have Burden 88th overall, by the way. He goes at 116.5.
Let me check where I have him at overall rankings, because I am still higher on Burden than most people are, even not as high as you are on Burden, obviously, but where do I have Burden ranked? I have Burden ranked at 109 overall, and I have Colson Loveland ranked at 103 overall, and he goes in the 120s or something like that. So, yeah, I've been just drafting both of these guys.
Yes, sir. So we can head on to the double-digit rounders now, because I feel like, we pretty much made the case for Burden. He's falling because of the injury. Don't let him fall in your drafts. Double-digit rounders.
Before he's back on the field in training camp, by the way, because he is also the type of player who's
going to
highlights. The highlights in the camp clips in the preseason games and stuff. That's where Burden becomes a 7th round pick.
Dude, there's going to be a highlight video of him mossing a Bears corner, one-handed catch in the corner of the end zone, and his ADP is going to shoot up by 3 rounds.
Yeah, no, I'm really shocked that he hasn't gone up more, even despite, like, because obviously, yeah, the injury's concerning for him, but I'm surprised people haven't just been like, I don't care, and still take him anyways and take the discount or whatever. But people have been wary of him, which is understandable to some degree, but I personally don't get it. I have both him and Loveland, like I said, inside 15 picks higher than where they actually go.
For sure. Double-digit rounders, Kyle Williams, wide receiver 60 off the board. Jack Bech at 65, Pat Bryant here at 68, and Jaylin Noel at wide receiver 73, all fluctuating between, the 130th pick and the 179th pick in terms of Williams to Noel in that range. So I guess I'll ask you, like, who are your favorite targets of this range, and maybe some guy that you don't really see it with?
So as prospects, all of these guys were the same caliber in terms of wide receiver 3 upside tier in the prospect model. Kyle Williams, Jack Bech, Pat Bryant. You could see some of the comps there. Like Jack Bech kind of somewhere between Zay Jones, Michael Thomas, Kyle Williams somewhere between A.D. Mitchell, Dante Pettis, Pat Bryant along the lines of like a John Mechie or a Michael Gallup, and then Jaylin Noel also kind of in that John Mechie, Brian Edwards range. Like we're not talking about massive stud prospects here. We're talking about, okay, maybe 1 out of every 4 of these guys hits, give or take. And I think one of these 4 guys will be good. The question is, which one do you like? For me, the answer is the first 2. Kyle Williams and Jack Bech are the ones that I've drafted the most of, mainly because of what's available to them. Kyle Williams can start as the wide receiver 2 on his team right away because Stephon Diggs is the only established target earner in the offense. And even he's coming off of an ACL tear. And Drake May, we both believe in highly. And I liked Kyle Williams' film. Jack Bech, even though he's taken a bit of a tumble, because Dante Thornton, hypothetically, and it makes logical sense, is the field stretcher. He might start in 2 wide receiver sets. Whatever the case is, Jakobi Meyers might, work ahead of Jack Bech at the beginning of the year, and Jack Bech, blah, blah, blah. I'm still taking him because I just think he was a much better prospect than the 154th overall pick off the board.
And that's the thing. This is a guy whose ADP started in, I believe, the 120s. But as we've heard reports, like people have kind of read the tea leaves. Oh, well, he's got a very overlapping skill set with Jakobi Meyers. I think it was a little bit copium at the beginning of the offseason that people would be like, well, he could also play on the outside next to Jakobi Meyers. Like fundamentally, that was never really going to work because where's the speed on this offense coming from? If you have Jakobi Meyers, if you have Jack Bech, and if you have a non-Dante Thornton type of field stretching receiver occupying that outside role. Like I think fundamentally it makes sense why they've structured it that way. However, if I'm getting a guy that I had, I believe, wide receiver 8 in my rankings going into this draft, if I'm not mistaken, let me take a look.
Both of these guys were in my top 10. I know that for sure.
Jack Bech was my wide receiver 8 in my rankings this year. Even if it's just an implied upside play, like, oh, shoot, he would need a Jakobi Meyers injury to really, really take the Bulls by the horn. I'm still taking him there. 154 overall. Are you kidding me?
He's being drafted as if Myers will be a 1,000-yard receiver and keep him off the field all season long.
154 ADP. It's like Jack Bech versus Romeo Doubs, Josh Palmer. Like he goes after Leggett. Like he goes.
The only argument to not take Jack Bech where he's going is to take quarterbacks, tight ends, or running backs. It's really just I'm not drafting any receivers over where he's going for sure.
You're drafting Kyle Pitts over him even. Like, come on. Like, we're not doing that. Jack Bech, even as an implied upside play, really, really like him at that cost. You mentioned it with Kyle Williams. We both believe in Drake May if he's a top 2 wide receiver on that team. Understandable. He was going a lot earlier in the offseason, but I feel like part of that was like maybe some pessimism in terms of the beat reporters. Oh, he's got to earn his role. It's like, guys, what rookie wide receiver doesn't have to earn his role in July? Let's be so
Justin
serious.
Jefferson had to earn his role in July. Old
BC Johnson
over him for 3 games. Like, Kyle Williams and Jack Bech were both also reception perception darlings as well. And Harmon liked both of them as far as their ability to separate. I'm actually glad that I only have 4% of both of these guys. I really would have expected it to be higher, but I'm going to be doing some drafts in July. And now that they're cheaper, it's better that I actually didn't draft them before.
Yeah. And I mean, I do have to mention this guy because I actually have quite a bit of ownership of the next guy here. I wasn't the biggest fan of the prospect, but also acknowledging that the Denver Broncos is one of the most fascinating situations to peg targets to outside of the number 1 Cortland Sutton is what's fascinating to me because I do think Pat Bryant does have utility. And I do think he's got the opportunity to play a better version of the role that we saw Devon Vele playing at the end of last year.
Yeah, my opinion on Bryant, because I actually have not drafted him once.
Really? So we're on the opposite sides here.
Yeah, my opinion on Bryant is I generally take a running back, quarterback, or wide receiver where he's going. That's a large majority of why I haven't drafted him. And if I take a shot on the Broncos wide receivers, it is usually Franklin or Vele in the last round of my draft. Because I'm not drafting Mims either. It's not like I have a bag of Mims or whatever. It's like I'm drafting Sutton. I'm drafting a tiny little bit of Evan Ingram here and there. And then I'm passing Mims and Bryant and just taking Franklin or Vele late.
Yeah. I mean, just reading the tea leaves, I think Pat Bryant was, in terms of just the player, obviously Franklin was a better prospect profile. Doesn't really show much in his rookie year. Plus, not to mention, I think they can both coexist in an ideal world. I think Franklin's biggest competition for targets will be Marvin Mims in terms of playing time. It's Devon Vele versus Pat Bryant. And I think the reason why you draft Pat Bryant is because you don't want to roll with Devon Vele, even though I thought Devon Vele actually was pretty good down the stretch
I
last
think
year.
Vele is just probably going to win that job, which is why I draft Vele. Which is why
I
I'm
think
not
Pat
drafting
Bryant will.
Bryant, is that I'm drafting Vele, and I think Vele is going to be the one who wins that job, because I wasn't super impressed by Pat Bryant, the prospect, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't either, but regardless, at this ADP cost, if you are a believer in him, again, I wasn't the biggest believer in talent, but I do recognize that if he does end up taking the Bulls by the horn and does become that number 2 receiver for Denver, there's a lot of upside working with Knicks in this Payton offense. So on top of that, I mean, every buzz we've heard from the Broncos right now has just been fellatioing Pat Bryant is the easiest way I'll say it.
Yeah, no, well, that'll be we got to watch that in preseason. Like, who's on the field, who's playing with the ones, like that receiver.
Does he play in the first quarter of the first couple preseason games? That'll be big telling.
Sutton, we have absolutely, like, it could be literally any order. The reason I take Franklin and Vele is because they're 18th round, scroll the F downs, and the shower narrative of Troy Franklin and Bo Nix playing in college.
And the final note I'll make of Pat Bryant is, hey, guess what? Regardless of who you think the Denver wide receiver 2 is, being able to access that at this depressed ADP is going to be a value regardless. Whether you like Troy Franklin, whether you like, I mean, Marvin Mims goes above him, which Marvin Mims
goes too high. I mean, we can all agree that Marvin Mims is overvalued based on what he did in week 16, 17, and 18 of last year. The reason I like Franklin the most too is because I kind of think of him as like this year's QJ, where it's like everybody's writing him off after a bad rookie year, but we knew he wasn't going to have a good rookie year because he was really raw as a prospect. And I could see him producing exactly what QJ did, which is like 700 yards, 8 touchdowns this year.
On top of that, you know what Sean Payton's biggest obsession is in his wide receiver core. We've heard it multiple times.
Size.
What is his obsession? Size. Who's he going to play when he has access to a 6'4 Sutton, a 6'3 Pat Bryant, and a 6'3 Troy Franklin?
Yeah, I mean, Franklin, I believe, is too slender. Is he 6'3"? I think he's only like 6'1" or 6'2".
Is he short? Okay, I know he was listed at 6'3".
He
so
doesn't have like size, like girth. He's like 178 or something.
Regardless, he's bigger than Marvin Mims is basically my point there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then Jaylin Noel, we can briefly touch on. I have 14% Christian Kirk, which is why I haven't been drafting a whole lot of Jaylin Noel. To me, Jaylin Noel's obstruction is Christian Kirk, and Christian Kirk's a good receiver. It's not like Christian Kirk's a bum. It's not like Christian Kirk is not gonna, is gonna lose his job. Like, Jaylin Noel has to be spectacular, in my opinion, for him to get on the field.
I will say, though, Christian Kirk is almost feeling like the new Marquise Brown in that aspect, where it's like he's a good receiver, but like it just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
like,
he's going to stay on the field too. Christian Kirk's been banged up for the last couple of years. I tend to think that Kirk weeks like 1 to 10, if we look up and he's like this year's Jacoby Myers, wouldn't shock me. That's why I've been drafting him.
Sure. So fun discussion. Obviously, again, this is going to be a little bit more informal on this type of video. There's a reason why we're going an hour long. We're having these big discussions because ultimately you guys will have to have these discussions in your drafts. We mentioned these guys. These are probably going to be, late rounders in your redraft league, the final guys that are drafted. The scroll the F downs, I would be shocked if anybody drafted any of these guys in their redraft leagues. Outside of maybe one profile we're looking at here, if he sees the right buzz in the offseason, maybe, I don't know, is a top 2 wide receiver in terms of routes in the preseason, can really take that ascension up. And I mean, he's both of our guys with Eli Manor. Go Canada.
Yeah, scroll the F downs right now, pretty much only applicable to best ball, but either of the Titans receivers to me are good scroll the F downs, whether it's Eli Manor, who was a 2nd round graded receiver for both of us, who fell to the 4th round, probably due to health concerns because he tore his ACL in college and probably didn't come up great on medicals. He has the opportunity, like you just said, to work as the number 2 behind Calvin Ridley, because behind Calvin Ridley, it's him. It's Shamir Adike, who they drafted slightly higher. It's Xavier Restrepo, who is the college teammate of their quarterback, Cam Ward, who went undrafted. One of these 2 guys, in my opinion, Elikai Manor or Xavier Restrepo, will become relevant. How relevant? I don't know. But in the 18th round, all you need is 3 or 4 good weeks out of these guys.
Yeah, and I mean, as high as I am on like a Rashee Rice, hey, if you're in the 18th round and you want the handcuff to Rashee Rice, I actually do think Royals could play a good middle of the field role if Rice missed any time.
Yeah, and then we also mentioned Thornton. Again, maybe he's a 2 to 3 week spike week guy because he runs in the 4.3s and catches a couple balls.
Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
Yeah, like all you're hoping for to Dante Thornton, because I promise you he's not going to earn targets, is that he catches 3 60-yard touchdowns all year.
I mean, like, for what it's worth, MVS last year had a couple games on the stretch with the Saints where he had like one game, 3 for 90 and 2 touchdowns or some bullshit like that.
Yeah, this is going to sound disgusting, but I don't want to take Dante Thornton because I think that both Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt are the same exact bet, only better.
Also, I found it. Three targets, 3 catches, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the Falcons in week 10.
Yeah. Yeah, there's guys here. And Isaac Tesla, I mean, there's just so many mouths to feed ahead of him on the depth chart in Detroit. I just don't see him doing a whole lot. Any of these like total, like if they're drafted on your best ball team, you will be the only one who ever drafted them. Torrey Horton, Jalen Lane of the Commanders, Horton of the Seahawks, Savion Williams of the Packers, Ty Felton of the Vikings, Shamir DK, who I mentioned, of the Titans also, Jimmy Horn of the Panthers, Jordan Watkins of the 49ers, Arian Smith of the Jets. Anybody here that you would throw a 3% exposure on just to say that you got a couple shares?
Two very interesting ones. I'll start with Horton simply because the archetype of player is actually the most different in this room. Actually, I believe his main competition for that role now is actually just going to be MVS, who we just kind of made fun of a second ago. But all jokes aside, I mean, Cooper Kupp, JSN, we know how they win. Torrey Horton actually gives you a different look for a receiver winning in a different way.
Yeah, he actually quietly can do a little bit of everything because in his college profile, he was QJ catching balls at the line of scrimmage in 2022.
Oh, yeah.
And then in 2023, he was a downfield receiver. So he can kind of do a little bit of everything. And he absolutely was the best prospect of this territory as well in terms of how he scored in the prospect model. But I do think, hey, if you have a Packers Jordan Love stack and you want to throw an 18th round Savion Williams on the back of it, that's fine. If you have a JJ McCarthy stack and you want to tack on Ty Felton to the end of it, that's totally fine. I think that's the only way in which I would draft any of these guys is if I had their quarterback and I'm looking to tack on a correlated piece at the end of my draft.
It was a game against Colorado, right? 16 catches for 133 yards. Just the QJ route died. A bunch of drags. I remember when I watched that game because I charted my notes on it. I'm like, does all he run is drags? And
yeah,
then obviously
I
went into
Malachi Corley production in that game for sure.
It was hilarious. But the other guy that I was going to mention too, this is situational based, but this is also a guy that, I mean, we've talked about. I liked him a little bit more than you in the prospect prospect range. We see Ty Felton sneak into, the third round area. He's got an intriguing skill set. Obviously, we know Jaylin Noel is probably the favorite to be the wide receiver 3 right off the get-go, but if Ty Felton can give them some juice, can give them some big play upside, I mean, we know how insulated that Vikings offense is.
Yeah, and Addison might catch 3 or 4 games for his DUI too. So that's the other thing that makes Felton look somewhat appealing, or Naylor somewhat appealing, is that you might get a couple games without Addison out there, route diet wise. And like I made reference to, like if you draft JJ McCarthy and you want a correlation piece in round 18, it makes sense to just tack on Ty Felton to it.
I mean, we saw JJ McCarthy, his connection that he had with Roman Wilson. Funny enough, Ty Felton, about 6 foot, slender build. I can kind of see him playing that third level role if he gets opportunity.
The problem is that they have a better receiver like that.
Addison.
Jordan Addison. So that's the problem with Ty Felton. But anyways, we're getting into
18th round. We're building out upside cases. He's not going to beat out Addison straight up. It would have to be an injury.
I guess you could say maybe Arian Smith for the Jets is interesting because there's absolutely nobody other than Garrett Wilson on the depth chart. Like,
he contributes to the nobody, though.
Yeah, he might be just part of that group. Like he's got to beat out Malachi Corley and Alan Lazard for routes and Josh Reynolds. Like those are the guys on the depth chart for the Jets right now. So maybe Arian Smith is somehow good. I doubt it. He was a pretty shit prospect and a big reach by the Jets, but we'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, for sure. Last thing I'll have on the Jets combo is Josh Reynolds, quite a little 18th rounder right now. I actually do think he's going to win that rollout.
Call me crazy, but I think Malachi Corley's the wagon I would hitch to in that group, because Corley, like QJ and like Franklin, was a raw prospect. So it kind of is not that unexpected for him to not have a good rookie season.
Yeah, no, we'll end up seeing what materializes. But again, hopefully you guys did enjoy about an hour of just rookie wide receiver talk. Again, we typically do this from a dynasty lens, but specifically with redraft season, with best ball season underway, we kind of want to give you guys the scoops, the analysis on how we think they're going to do in their rookie seasons.
For sure. So yeah, you guys are going to be watching this on Saturday. We will have you covered for a top 24 tier list of the 2026 class from a dynasty angle tomorrow, because now that we've gone through all the prospect model stuff, we can really start to refine those rankings and talk about how good this class really is at all 4 fantasy positions. If you enjoyed this video, you want to start drafting some teams over on Underdog, head on down to the link in the pinned comment to sign up. You'll get up to $1,000 in bonus cash to start drafting. You can put in $50. You'll get a deposit bonus when you use code FSC. You could start doing some Best Ball Mania drafts. You can turn $25 into $2 million. If you draft the right combination of players and things go right for you, this is going to be a lot of fun this best ball summer as it winds down. Starting to get into the range. Like next week, we're going to have rookies reporting to training camp. We're going to start getting a little bit more news. 2 weeks from now, the actual training camp will begin. Then pretty soon this month, there's a football game on. Like we have a Hall of Fame game at the end of this month where there's actual NFL football being played.
Yeah, the fact that the Hall of Fame game's coming, the fact that you know now with certainty that the first game of the NFL season, regular season, is going to be on your birthday, like that's pretty wild. Not on top of that, I mean, we're giving you a treat on your birthday. You get to watch Cowboys Eagles blood being shed on a football field.
I just love that I get to watch a football game on my birthday. That's what I'm excited.
I'm jealous. I never will be able to, by the way.
No, unless we get some spring football or something, like that's the only way you're getting it. But anyways, we're yapping at this point. Like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoyed. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.